Hello, Candice.
Hello, Lilou.
How are you doing?
I am doing so great. I'm so excited to see you.
I'm very excited to be interviewing you, and I want to thank you for reaching out, sending this email, and because you've been working for many years, between 2008 and 2014 with Dolores Cannon, that passed in 2014. You have developed your own method concept with the Beyond Quantum Healing. I think Dolores was really, truly, such a pioneer and opened so many doors, and the information that came through her clients in the sessions are incredible. And the information that she shared with the world throughout those books and all the people she trained, etc. It must have been quite something to work close to her for all these years.
Dolores Cannon was larger than life. She was larger than life. And here's the most amazing thing to say. She's larger than life in the next life. She is not done working. She used to say, I'm going to work till I'm 100. They are telling me I'm working till I'm 100. And of course, she passed in her early 80s in 2014. But they were still right, because she's still working. So many people have discovered her. So many people connect with her, her practitioners, people who do her work and who have been inspired by her work, continue to connect with her. And I get phone calls and emails constantly that start a little bit like, you won't believe this, but I got this message from Dolores Cannon. And I'm like, I believe it. And it's like snowballing. She's bigger than ever.
So how did her work continue from the moment she passed away? Can you remind us of the circumstances of her death?
I can. So so this was in fall of 2014, and she'd actually, earlier she had taken a fall and she'd hit her head, and she'd recovered from that, and she was doing all right. And I should say that the only reason I feel comfortable sharing this is I know that her family has at least once or twice shared this publicly. So that's why I feel comfortable sharing it. But she started to have some more issues, and she was back in the hospital, and it was actually a hospital sepsis infection that ended up bringing her into her transition phase. 2014.
And when you're saying that she's still working there, so it means you receive communication, people receive communication. Can you tell us, does that happen in sessions or just you hear her?
I would love to tell you about how that works. So the best way to tell you that is to go back to when she was alive. So when she was alive, and I was so profoundly blessed to be able to assist her in her live classes. And so the practitioners would come, and also reunions. We arranged reunions with the practitioners, and we would talk. And of course, everyone wanted to be by her and talk to her about sessions and what she was doing and what was happening in our session work. And the practitioners would say a couple of things. They would say, it felt like you were there with me in the session. And she would go, oh, really? And she would say, what did I say? And the practitioners would share that. And she would say, that sounds like what I would say. And then another thing happened. A lot of people started dreaming about her and dreaming about particularly an auditorium where she would be speaking. And we called them the auditorium dreams. And we would share them with her too. And she was profoundly interested in this. And she kind of made it light a little bit. She would always smile. She was always very agreeable and loved hearing about that. And what I found was after she passed, those things continued and actually got stronger. So that's the way it works. And not just for me, but for lots of people. Her students and even others who simply love her and have made a connection with her.
Tell us how her work evolved over the years, and how did you find out about her? What was actually the real session about? Because many things happen in those hours of sessions. How would you summarize it now with all these years of practicing next to her?
Yeah, well, Part of that is, it's certainly changing. Let's just say that it is changing, just like we as humans are changing and expanding. And that's giving me goosebumps just saying it. We've expanded more in the last 6 months than most of us have in any of our lifetimes. So here's how I found Dolores. I had a chronic pain condition, and it had been affecting me for many, many years. And I'd gone to all the doctors you can imagine, tried all the drugs and techniques you can imagine, and I kind of gave up. I did find Reiki. Reiki was soothing and wonderful, and it was my doorway into this whole idea of being able to help myself to heal myself. But I hadn't solved all of those problems yet. I still had a lot of problems. And I was a professional photographer, actually, down in Austin, Texas, and I had set up the biggest shoot of my professional career with a great country and Western singer and props and stage hands. And I had to call it off. I had to call it off because of my pain condition. And that day I cried and cried and I cried, and I changed the story in my mind. And
because your husband kept on telling you, I mean, there's always something going on with you.
There's always something wrong with you. And he was right. And I hated it because I'm a type A go-getter. I burned and blew through most of it, but sometimes it just smacked me to the ground. And this was one of those times. And in my mind, as I'm crying, basically in my bed, in my pillow, my question, rather than I need help, rather than that, it was, I need to do something different. I need to do something different. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do different? And I actually had a profound spiritual experience. I left my body. I found myself in this beautiful field. These 5 beautiful light beings were standing before me. And the one in the center stood up and handed me a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, there were 3 things written very clearly. And
That's
I read
clear.
what I know, it was very clear. 1, 2, 3. And I won't go through 1 and 2, but number 3 was have a past life regression. And the next day when I got up, every miracle you can imagine for number 1 happened. Every miracle for number 2 that you could imagine happened. And just when I'm thinking, this is crazy, is there a movie camera following me? I couldn't believe how amazing it was. And I was coming to the end of my afternoon, and I went to go get the mail, and I opened up I'm getting goosebumps. I went to open up the mailbox, and there was a book in there, and it was Convoluted Universe by Dolores Cannon. I'd never heard of her before.
Wow.
It was a used book by a friend who stuck a note in and said, I hear she's having classes soon. I took that book. I went straight to my house. I looked her up on the computer. I'm like, oh, okay, this is who this is. I call her office. I find out, that where it is and where the class is.
And you
then
registered.
All of that. But I mean, there's so many other things. My mother was living with us. I couldn't get away. I had all these other things. All of it just lined up so perfectly. And I went to go see her. And not only that, she chose me, even though I didn't volunteer, which is an important part of this story. She chose me to be the demonstration subject in her classroom. And that's what Spirit was telling me the whole way driving up there. And I couldn't believe it. She took volunteer names, and I did not put my name on there. And I said, if she picks me to have, at the time it was called Dolores Cannon.
Which they told you she would.
Yes. Yeah. The whole way driving up. It was 9 hours from Austin to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And the whole time Spirit is saying, you're going to have a session with her. And I'm like, why me? Because it's your destiny. And it was like that kind of thing. And when I got to her class and she said, now put your name on this notebook. I didn't. My roommate did. Most of the class did. I didn't.
Of course.
And I thought, if she picks me, even though I don't put my name up there, my life's going to change. And that's exactly what happened.
So you're part of the same, we would say, soul sisters.
So. Something. So I've gotten some clues, but I've kept some of that to myself. But I will tell you this, when I've asked some questions, when my mother was passing in 2016, and she had a really rough night, and I thought she might actually die that night. And she said, there was a lady who came to see me. I said, who came to see you? I don't know who it was, she said. And she was kind of...
But she had curly short hair.
She just, Mom was, she was on medications, another thing. And then after a while, she looked at me, she goes, well, I don't know who it was, but I think her name was Doris. And I went, Doris? And she was like, yeah. And anyway, later I heard Dolores in my mind say, well, if you think we're connected, I'm actually had more lives with your mom. Can you believe that? So the communication just kept going.
Yeah. And so you must have experienced a lot through all those sessions, because you were demonstrating her work. So spirit, you were talking, you were speaking the information through those hypnosis sessions. Can we say it's a hypnotic state, right?
Yeah.
It's a trance state.
Yes, it was. And there's a lot of misunderstandings about a trance state, but one of my favorite things.
Please clarify.
Yeah, my favorite things to say about it is it's not anesthesia. It's not anesthesia. I mean, most people think either of the watch, or they think you can control someone's mind, or you think somebody's going to put you to sleep and you're going to wake up and something's going to change. And it's really none of those things. I was terribly nervous before my session with Dolores on class day. Terribly nervous, but I was so excited, and I knew something major was going to happen. And rather than be put to sleep, it's a hyper-aware state. Hyper-aware. So I was in this ballroom, and there's, 25 people or so observing this, and Dolores was there, and I heard everything. I heard people clicking their pens. I heard at one point, you know what I heard? This shows the hyper-awareness. I heard the ballroom door open. I heard the entire class shift in their chair and go like this. Even though my eyes were closed, I could feel that they were going, go away, to whoever was coming in the room. So it's a hyper-aware state. And I just followed her voice like she suggested. And it all just unfolded, just right there in the mind's eye,
And surprising details come through.
Yeah, amazing details. And what I'm fascinated to tell you now, Lilou, is that was 12 and a half years ago now. The session that I had with Dolores Cannon then continues to inform to this day on level after level after level. Can I tell you how? Can I tell you a little bit about the session?
Yeah, and especially the connection with those light beings that continue and how they keep on working on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I didn't know who they were, right? I mean, that was the experience I had in my bedroom, and then I just went to Dolores's class. I didn't know who they were, not for a while. They did make an appearance in Dolores's session at the end. But the life that I experienced was I was actually a caveman. I was a caveman. I looked down at my feet. I have these hairy red legs. I was this skinny kind of reddish colored caveman. And I was hungry. And I was hiding in a cave. And so Dolores was just asking me about my life. And she, basically she said, well, where's the other cavemen, right? And what I found out was that I basically got kicked out of the caveman group. And the reason I got kicked out was because I had these new ideas about how to do things. And I wanted to use tools and other methods of doing things. And the caveman society at the time worked on, if the biggest, strongest caveman is the leader and they can beat you up, then that's what you're going to do here. And I was trying to get us to eat better and live better with cooperation and co-creation, even as a caveman. And they basically came at me with spears, and I fell off of a cliff. And that was my end of my life as a caveman. And then Dolores Cannon asks about that life, what I'm supposed to learn from it. And then also asked why I have the pain this continuous pain for decades and decades. And my higher self came through. I believe it was the center light being, right, who stood up and gave me the three things to do, and said I was not following my life path. I was supposed to be doing this work.
Yeah.
And it was astonishing then what happened, because
and daring to do this work, because we're going to go into it a little bit later on what you have created beyond quantum healing, but it's quite a jump. I mean, to dare to, it's similar to your caveman story, actually, in this lifetime.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. So I started with the directive of my higher self immediately by supporting the people who did Dolores's work and co-creating a support forum like that. And that's the way it worked. And the interesting thing about the pain condition was, though, I sat up, and because my higher self and my light team and the angels gave me light to heal, I sat up completely expecting to not have pain. And I did, actually. I still had pain. And I didn't understand that. But you know what? As soon as I started doing less photography and more healing with people, about 3 months later, all of that is gone. And that's problems that I had for 20, 25 years.
Would you say it's the case for most people now, with all the sessions you've seen, when we're not on life purpose, we cannot fully receive healing? Or
healing is not anesthesia and somebody waves a wand and you're going to heal. A client, no matter what the modality used, no matter what it is, has to make either a realization or a profound change in their life. One of those things have to happen. You don't just get it on a platter like that. And sometimes it's simply understanding something, and that will bring the healing. But very often it's making some changes. It's getting out of the job that you don't like, or it's changing the relationship with somebody that you have some issues with, or whatever. So it takes cooperation by the client to be able to accept healing, and it doesn't always happen. And sometimes we live in a free will world. The teams, the higher self, will give instructions.
Yeah, the instructions and the information that they're receiving in these sessions make a big difference too, because you actually feel it. I mean, the brain aligns with a little bit more with this intangible thing happening.
Yeah. It's crazy, though, because sometimes it doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah. So I'll give you a quick example. I had a client who had an amazing session, and he didn't like his job, and he asked the question, should I quit my job and start my own company? Now, that was just one of his problems. He also had some issues with his wife. Should I quit my job and start my own company? Because he didn't really like his job, but he was doing very well in it. He had some issues with his wife. It was an arranged marriage. He came from a culture where it was an arranged marriage. They were okay, but, like that. So the higher self said yes, gave a couple little hints about the wife, but basically said, quit your job, start this company. He quit his job. He started that company. He sold his house, mortgaged his house, started this company, lost everything. Lost absolutely everything. But here's what happened. He and his wife moved into a tiny apartment, and they fell in love. They fell in love, and then after that, he started yet another company. So much of this has to do with faith. Faith and understanding. So if he would have not started this company, lost everything, and had to be this close to his wife in a small apartment, then the second part of what he really desired might not have happened. And then eventually it worked out just amazing anyway. So that's one of the ways that this works, making these big...
It's funny how sometimes we have to go through something difficult. Like right now, what humanity is going through is really tough. And yet something is opening. Do you receive some message currently about
oh my gosh, yeah,
what's really going on in the background?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I heard from Dolores this morning. That's when I dream about her often. I hear her often in the mornings, and she called it the time of the great transition. And she starts out by basically saying, "It's time." And I always know it's Dolores because she uses these phrases that I don't use. Like she says, "It's time to stop dilly-dallying around." I never say dilly-dally ever in my life. It's not my word, right? But yes, profound change. And her biggest message really is you're creating it. Individually, you're creating it. Yes, there's chaos out there. Yes, there's a lot of that. But how you focus is creating your experience of this. And you really need to choose how you want to do that. And the other part of the message she sent today was a little bit of, she used the example of a circus elephant. She said, everything's crumbling. You know, the chains are crumbling, the block is crumbling, and you're untethered. And that's uncomfortable and it can be scary. She said, but don't go back into the tent. Don't go back into the circus tent. You don't want it to go back to the way it was, because this is your opportunity to create during all of this. While it's crumbling, you don't want that old stuff. This is why you came here.
Does she make reference to the new world, to the new Earth? Because she was talking a lot about it and how it would split into two planets.
Yeah.
What's
happening right now?
Yes,
that's happening right now. Think about the people that you know in your own world that you see. There are people who are mired in division and fear and anger and just mayhem and blinded by blame and all of that. And then there's another group who understands a little bit more about the creative aspect of this. But that doesn't mean sitting back and not being proactive either. That, you know, this is the planet of creation again, and free will. And there's really no savior coming to do things for you. We have support and help in all kinds of ways, but this is exactly it. This is the transition where the new Earth really, really has, it's starting to have its foothold. The old Earth is that chaos, is the wars, is the destruction, is the abuse of our planet. She also, though, says, in the end, we all come back together. And I think, though, I have a vision of the Earth splitting.
Yeah.
And the new Earth being the thing that we all talk about so much, you know, 5D and being lighter and things being easier and more joyful. And the old Earth is...
But we have to let go of fear to be
exactly.
there.
And we have to let go of the old Earth because that's where that's going. Now, the point she wanted to make, though, is this Earth, this old Earth, is still going to go and end up with Source. It's still going to get there. It's not lost to creation or, you know, whatever. It's just the longer road. It's the harder road. But there are many who have chosen that road for a variety of reasons, including helping this Earth choose, right?
So it's not a physical, because that's always difficult to understand, you know, even when I do some interviews in French, because this is a topic I go quite a lot through, this new Earth, old Earth, Earth fear, Earth love, but like, is it physical? Or is it something physically happening? Are people physically making the transition from this Earth to another world?
The analogies of the radio keep coming back, you know, tuning the station different, you know, rather than the chaotic sound and music that jangles your nerves, changing that. I'm an artist and photographer, so I have been given it visually, which is this. Physically, almost kind of, yes, meaning you and, let's say you and your neighbor. And the visual I've been given is tracing paper. So like imagine your life and everything about you on a piece of tracing paper. Your neighbor who sees things much different than you on another piece of tracing paper. Put those two pieces of tracing paper together. They look like they're in the same place.
But they're a different dimension. Yes.
Yes, but just paper thin, right? Now,
Beautiful.
how it all plays
I like
out.
that.
How it all plays out I could hear Dolores right now. You don't want to know. She said, you want the surprise. Some of this ecstatic and elation is part of the surprise in the creating it. It's like reading a mystery novel that's very thick and then skipping to the last page because you want to know so much. And the idea is to go and experience all of this as we get there.
What is really our higher self wanting right now? I mean, why some of us, I mean, all of us here on the planet right now chose this time?
Yes. Actually stood in line for a lottery ticket to be able to come is what I've been told in sessions. Not only did you just choose, literally, it's like
you
the
begged
golden
for
ticket. Yes, it's like the golden ticket to be here, front row center. Because even what she'd say today, what did she say? She said, universe after universe are going to talk about this for eternity. And what is this exactly? It's that the earth and the humanity are evolving and ascending together. All manner of beings are surrounding us, watching this. And we're in the show. We're in the show. And it is hard, but our higher aspects want us to have faith and to continue to, look, you have to be nice to yourself. We all do, especially empaths right now. There are times that it's really hard to be on the planet right now, really hard. And I've shed many tears myself. That's fine to shed those tears. When you shed those tears, you release that information, that heaviness. Actually, Emoto, did you know Emoto, Masaru Emoto, the Japanese?
Yeah, I went there to interview him, yeah.
You know, he died within 24 hours of Dolores. Did you know that?
Yeah, it was a shocker. It was,
yeah.
With the lungs, I think. He had water in his lungs.
Imagine that. Well, they've been together working. And so this idea of tears, you actually release frustration, heaviness, information with your tears. So it's okay. It's okay to cry. If you feel like you need to cry, you're actually helping cleanse your body. And this is part of being human. You have to be nice to yourself. That's all there is to it. You have to be nice and trust and believe and feel and focus on the new earth that you want. Because when you descend into fear, anger, blame, judgment, or where I can't forgive or whatever, that's when you're following that old earth path. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. Tell us about ETs for a while. Again, we're going to see how your method have shifted, and so they're adjusted to these times. But
yeah,
how did those, because Dolores had a lot of contacts with ETs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information and lives, past lives, current lives, parallel lives, future lives that we have as ETs, or are they coming in to save us?
No. They are going to support us, though. Now, what that support looks like is anybody's guess. There are a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of different ways. But the whole idea of being a creator and a co-creator with the rest of humanity on the planet is not to wait for the salvation, the savior, to do all that. But there is assistance from the back end. But amazing kinds of sessions have come in. Here's a really interesting session. A person who came to see me, who came from a physical planet where his craft was orbiting, observing, and he, in this physical ET body, was so enamored with what was going on the planet, he had the technology to put his physical body into stasis and continue to orbit the planet while he sent his energy into having, basically being a walk-in. Right at the time of a birth of of this child so that he could experience this. There are so many stories like this, and so many people in sessions are making contact with their home planet or their home race. A session I did recently had the man say, don't make too big of a deal about what planet or what star system you're from. Some humans get real excited
we
about that.
We get identify with it.
Yes, we want to categorize. And he said that's as bad as some of the divisions that's happening in humanity that it's time to let go of. So don't even do it cosmically.
Yes, and but there is how do you say? So there is. I'm excited because then I love these type of interviews because then there's so much information going through, but and reaffirmation of the process. You know, the seeding. Is there some kind of seeding or some kind of? I guess our DNA is being upgraded right now. Frequencies are stronger than ever before. Some people are feeling headaches and heaviness, or like if we drank the day before but we didn't drink, and we feel like all these symptoms, and mediums and people in France are talking about it, and it's actually quite interesting how we're adjusting right now to what currently is going on. So do you have information about this process within the body and what's truly happening and how we can best adjust?
It's ramping up. It's certainly ramping up. The number one most important thing you can do is drink water.
Yeah.
Dolores called, this is from a dream, that she and Emoto came to me in a dream, and we did this entire dream about water. So I live in Kansas, and Kansas is known as sort of this prairie land, right? But what it used to be is this vast ocean, right? So the energy of that water is still here, even though there's no ocean here. And what they told me, and what I'm learning more and more, is underneath there's the salt deposits, which are the crystals. So that's why we're called the heartland here in America. Anyway, water. Dolores calls water liquid consciousness. Hydrate your body, drink water, and that will help all of your ascension symptoms. We've been feeling ascension symptoms for years, but they're ramping up. Headaches. There's a lot of them. Some people have had headaches that go on for days or weeks. I myself, on Easter Sunday, had a headache so strong that my husband begged to take me to the emergency room, and I said no, for a lot of reasons, including the fact that my 90-year-old father is now living with us, and that was back, when nobody knew what was really going on out there, and I wouldn't go. But what I learned very quickly is how, it was basically a fast upgrade, pineal and, the chakras that are here, the crown and the above chakras, to let in some of this light. Now, so some people with the headaches that go over and over again don't have to do what I did, which is I cried on the floor holding my head for hours. I really did. I was crying and holding my head like this. I sorry to do it, but I scared my husband silly. I really did, because he thought I was having a brain aneurysm. But see, here's where the trust comes in again. I kept checking in. Do I go? And the answer is no. You'll be fine. It's always going back to trust, and that's what our higher self wants us to know.
And listening within, because I hear about all these sessions that are, everybody should try this. But going within is then the key. That's what we understand is really here.
And our higher self is not a stranger. It is us. It is us. Now, this is where this quantum healing has been so interesting, how it's changed, because it used to be further apart. It's not anymore. That's part of what, as we are expanding our realms, what we're really doing is bringing in more of our higher self, some kind of more than others. So that small voice that you are hearing, the one that is always loving, that is always supportive, that is always there for you if you can just let go of some of the ego stuff and some of the fear programming that we all have been subjected to, you can hear that. It's not a stranger. It is you. And if you can give yourself some, through meditation, through quantum healing, through a lot of different, there's a lot of great modalities out there. Dolores herself said, there are many ways to have this kind of communication and healing. What her method was, she said, was just the easiest way she had found. So there are many ways to do this.
I don't know if I said this on video, but I became pregnant after a session with Dolores. After trying a lot of things for 2 years. So our little Stella is now 16 months, and she's definitely, the day after that session, I was pregnant. Of course, my husband and I made love, but let me tell you, it's unbelievable what information, when we hear our higher self. And in my case, Virgin Mary came, so she did a full healing too. Sometimes those beings show up too in those sessions.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And now since more and more of this kind of session work is done online, some of this is being captured.
Is that okay, by the way, online? Because I was actually, some of the practitioners, at least in France, are not so much into the online because of the, what about if something happens, nobody is there next to that person, etc.
I understand. Yeah, there's a lot of considerations. Believe me, I assisted Dolores for many years where she believed that. But let me tell you, my beautiful Dolores, she was not a technology person. She could not imagine this. When, not always, but most of the time, if she wanted to read an email, we would print it for her. She couldn't imagine this, number one. And it's a different time. Humans are different. And there's ways to talk to the energy about that. And in the end, it goes back again to trust. Here's what Dolores and here's what many quantum healers say. The higher self, your healing team, is not going to bring you a session that you can't handle. For whatever reason, it's not going to do it. So if it's not going to do it in real life, it's also not going to do it online. And I've been doing sessions online now for more than 3 years. And there has been some technological things happen. Do you know, upon a
like it could stop. The internet could all of a sudden, your Wi-Fi is not working and it's cut and you're there in the middle of a session.
It has and it does. And sometimes it has to be restarted again. And I'm telling you, upon investigation, because I was very curious about this too, there's always a reason.
Right.
Here's one. Oh, your session was interrupted for 20 minutes because he needed to get out of that room where these things were not aligning to his energy. He needed to go in this room. He laid down by plants in this room. He took his laptop, laid on the floor by plants after a 20-minute break because his higher self said, this is why we needed to do this. So even if there's a break.
That's what's supposed to happen.
Yes. And here's another thing too. We also say there's nothing that says that you can't have a monitor, meaning somebody in the other room who's hanging out that is pre-briefed on how to assist. And bottom line, if you're not comfortable doing it online, if your practitioner is not comfortable doing it online, please don't do it online. Just don't, right? This is all about being sovereign, both the client and the practitioner.
But you see, time passed by because then when Dolores passed away, I was like, oh, and she had proposed for me to do a session and go and drive to her, and I didn't. And I'm like, I'll never forget, and obviously I had the session just before getting pregnant, and that was the time, and through a facilitator, and it was in French, and maybe I was supposed to do it in French, etc. So, but it's time goes by, and then we have some regrets. You don't know what could happen to a person and message we can get. And there is always ways, as we know, because time is happening on many different levels, multidimensionally, that things could, obviously we could always, there's no, it's not perfect, and there's always ways to go back at it. And in the end, it's what we're supposed to experience. So I'm very grateful for that people are continuing to offer sessions like this, and it's happening. Just one other question about time. timelines. You know, when you're saying past, present, future is happening at the same time. So it feels like there is more opportunities right now or that we're feeling more what's going on in past lives, and we're able to adjust it. You know what I'm saying? Like, even in the body, there's things that hurt. You're like, is this really happening here? Or is this in a different? I mean, it seems like it's the veil is definitely thinner.
Yeah, one of the dreams I had of Emoto and Dolores was it was an auditorium dream, and they were doing the can behind a curtain. And what they told me was, think of the curtain as the veil, and they were kicking the curtain to make the veil thinner, right? I only ever once had the opportunity to actually spend the night in Dolores Cannon's house in Arkansas, and that was after her death. But let's just say I didn't sleep at all that night. Not like at all, really, in a way. I mean, I slept, I would have dreams, I would wake up. I slept, I would have dreams, I would wake up. And one of the dreams I had was so important, and it's the one that I remember more than any. And that was, I sat up, there was like a little sleeper sofa near the kind of back porch door. That's where I was hanging out. Her memorial service was the next day. And I'm sleeping there, and in my dream, Dolores comes out of her office and brings this man. And she kind of just marches him over to me, and she looks at me and she said, "Candice, I want you to meet someone." She said, "This is Nostradamus." And I stood up and I went, I'm just like, what? The whole night was like that. And that's all that, basically here's what she said. She said, what's important is not what's in the books, meaning hers. You know, she wrote a series of 3 books on Nostradamus. She says, the information is not what's important. She said, the way of communication and time travel is what is important here. So, Lilou, did you know this? Did you know that Nostradamus said, when he was asked, where do you get your information? Where how is it that you're being able to provide this information in an interview in his time? And this is, real time, right? In his time. This isn't Dolores. And his answer was, spirits from the future are assisting me. And what Dolores is really pointing out is that the way that they connected, she was assisting him as much as he was. Do you see what's going on here? That just gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Time is far more fluid than we could possibly imagine. And she's been poking me on the shoulder since you talked about your session. She simply wants to say one sentence, which was, I was there, meaning at your session.
For sure. For sure.
She was.
Oh my God. I love her. Tell her I love her. We love you, Dolores. We miss you.
She knows.
My God, we miss you. So how did all this tell us? How did this shifted for you? So Dolores passed, and did you had already, because you created the
BQH? Yeah.
So how did that come about, and how did that evolve?
Slowly, very slowly. After Dolores died, a lot of things began to shift and change, and I missed her so much.
Within the organization, or how?
Yeah, that too. I worked very closely with Dolores, but after she died, we became independent. And so what am I talking about, we? It was just the community of practitioners. We became independent. And for a while, it was just people who did Dolores's work. And then I really started to listen to my own inner guidance, which was, how about co-create with other healers? Let's learn from each other past just this one teacher and this one method. And that's what we did. And we did that for a number of years. And then I really started listening, and I started being more intuitive in my sessions. I started being more creative in my sessions. And of course, the big one, I started doing sessions like this online. And at first I was, I was standing next to Dolores all those years when she didn't recommend that. But I also am so inspired by her because she was a rebel and she did what she knew was right in her heart.
She was a rebel for sure.
Yes, she was. I mean, she was in the Bible Belt doing what she did in those days. And that's me too. I mean, remember the caveman? Remember the caveman?
Yeah.
So back I went to trusting, listening. And it's amazing what happens when you really start trusting the entire universe in front of you. The magic, it's a magic carpet just rolls out in front of you. If you can just give that trust over, it just will be laid out for you. And that's exactly what happened. And so now...
When did it become really clear? Which year?
2017. 2017, and I did my... Are you gonna believe this? I did my very first online session with a woman who was in intensive care in the hospital. And
that's osé, as we say in French.
I was reading a Facebook post, and she said, when I get out of here, if I get out of here, I'm going to go have a QHHT session. It's what she said. And of course, knowing what the rules were, I thought to myself, even if you get out of there, I don't think, and I knew where she lived. It was fairly remote for her. I knew what practitioners were around the world. She wasn't going to be able to get to one. So that means she couldn't have a session. And I'd already been experimenting with some other things. And I actually contacted her and I said, hey, how about we try something? And we did. And we just talked, and believe it or not, Lilou, after just talking with her and the extraordinary connection we made just by talking, they moved her out of intensive care into a regular room, and then out of the regular room the next day. And then when she got home, the day she got home, this woman only had 30% heart function.
Wow.
She was very, very ill. She was a single mom with 3 kids.
Oh.
She was so afraid she was going to die and leave her children. She had got her mom to watch her kids. She laid on her sofa with her dog right next to her, which, again, I'm learning how important animals are.
Yeah.
Our animals want to be there to support us. That doesn't happen when you travel to somebody's office, typically. And being in your home, she was so happy to be home, so happy to be out of the hospital. She had this fabulous session where she got all of her questions answered. She got the healing that she asked for. And within several weeks, she felt good enough to start her own business and start traveling. When all that's, I'm like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's just time to believe I have something to offer.
So apart from I get that it's your work now is more intuitive, that you do it online, that you let it really kind of whatever needs to show up shows up.
Yeah.
But how is that different from how? What's the difference between Dolores Cannon's technique and what you have created?
A lot of people ask that question. There are several things, and we've already gone over some of them. But basically, we allow the client, or we inspire, I would rather use that word. We inspire the practitioner and the client to come together energetically and design an approach that works for them, rather than create an approach and apply it to every client. As far as I know, that's pretty unique out there. And when I did create BQH, even though my family said, you're nuts, you shouldn't do it like this, rather than lock myself up in a room and just create something and make it come out, I actually did it kind of like an open mic night with my community. I actually said, give me feedback while I'm doing this. So it's another kind of co-creation. They gave me feedback on my suggestions. So it is built by a number of people. And I also
like an open source, we could say.
It's exactly what it is, which is why I call BQH a concept as much as a technique. Now, a lot of people, especially newer to healing practitioners, would ask, well, if it's so open and I don't know anything, what do I do? have a framework. We absolutely provide a framework. But what I say is change it up any way that you can or want to. Be creative. Mix it up. Bring all of your skills if you want. All of them.
Yeah. And it's beautiful because people have, of course, their history and their past. But though, how do you... not control, because we're not in this era, and I get that you have created this for this reason too, so that it's adjustable and there's this flexibility, but you know what I mean? How do you actually, because over the years, having interviewed a lot of people, some people shift, some people change, some people get the technique for themselves and then shift them, and then it creates different things. I mean, how do you deal with all this?
Well, you're right about that happening, because that happens. That's been happening. This is nothing new. This is what has I watched a number of people have a session with Dolores and then kind of turn that into something, go off and really kind of never give her credit. And that used to not make me feel very good. I used to think if I would never do that. And so that's why I don't. That's why I talk about her a lot. She's such an inspiration. But nobody can control, and nor would they want to, right? once they leave. But here's the difference that I have decided to do with BQH. My class is ever evolving. So after taking the class once a month, I offer a webinar where practitioners can come. The webinar is added to the class. The class just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So the class isn't just that and stop. And our community and our support forum is a living, breathing thing. So as long as you're with us, hang with us, interface with us, come to these webinars, but I can't, like any teacher out there, I can't know what somebody's going to do once. So there is no, and this is the day of controlling others is kind of a
no, but of creating some kind of not rules either, but some just so that there is ethic and just things that are
sure, as long as the health, safety, and well-being of the client is uppermost in the mind, then really anything goes. And quite frankly, Lilou, this is what's almost been happening anyway. It's just that practitioners didn't talk about it.
Yes. From what I've experienced with the work through a practitioner, indeed, it was different, I'm sure, than the exact work from Dolores.
So at least this is transparent.
Yeah.
It's transparent, and we're in this transition phase of humanity and the planet. You have to be transparent. You can't hide anything. You can't. It's no longer possible.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay. So tell us a little bit the differences too that you have found, apart from letting it. So it's pretty much the same. People do past life regression. They receive message. They would speak. You would question their higher self. You would receive answers. All this is there in the BHQ.
BQH.
BQH. Sorry.
It's all right.
Beyond quantum healing.
Beyond quantum healing. Yeah, actually, did I write it down? Yeah, it's actually inspired by Dolores. Right out of her 3 Waves book, she wrote, "What better gratification could a teacher have than to have her students take what they have been taught and not be afraid to go beyond?" So that's where the word beyond came from. And she talks about limitations. So there is no no limitations. But now I've lost my train of thought.
So it's the same sessions, but just online. It provides the same. It can go in. It incorporates their own what those facilitators have learned. So it goes beyond just the Dolores Cannon session, we could say.
Correct. It's loosely based on the past life regression model. Loosely. Dolores herself, when I took her class, it was called Dolores Cannon's Method of Past Life Regression. That's what it was called. It wasn't called the QHHT until later, because she realized it was just
beyond that.
Exactly. It was expanding, right? Yeah. So she had to call it something different, and that's why. But it's still kind of what we refer to in our world, right? A spiritual regression. But even that word regression is not great, right? So, it's very difficult to use words here. Many sessions do follow exactly that model of relaxation, having an experience, it teams, other realms.
How many hours?
As little
then
as
again,
two.
It has changed.
Yeah,
it's a bit more flexible.
Sometimes very quick, and sometimes it takes a while. You know, it's so individual. It's so individual. But Lilou, the things that have come from being open to what's coming. So as an example, I will give you an example. Some people who do hypnosis kind of work when they're dealing with the client, and the client is, sometimes the word is resisting. You know, it's not, things don't seem to really be going right. The idea is to be persistent, to just keep throwing the hypnosis tools, and often that works. Sometimes that doesn't work, and other things can happen. And some of those things can be sitting up and having a Reiki session just right then, which is one of the ways actually I had a profound session where this ball of light, while I am doing this Reiki session, she'd been trying to have kind of the regression session, said, sit up, let's just do some Reiki. This ball of light comes through the room. She's like, I don't know what you're doing. And I'm getting information. And it's like, we're bypassing the conscious mind. That's what the communication I got from this light ball that's blowing through the room. And she's like, I don't know what you're doing, but it feels great. And so it's the permission slip of being able to, rather than by, you know, the procedures or the how-tos or follow this, rather than be bound by that, it's a permission slip to just, I tell practitioners this all the time, and I think it's might be valid information no matter what modality you practice out there. Sometimes it's okay to just take a breath, sit back, check in and go, what? You know, what? Give me the next step. Just give me, I don't want to look it up. I don't want to look it up from some sort of recipe or prescription. Just what is it? That trust, that energy of trust is so profound and so profoundly beautiful and brings amazing things. Another time I did that, I had a client who found she just couldn't have any words or any images or anything. Do you know how her session ended up? It was completely kinesthetic. She experienced another life in another realm where all she did was move and dance like this, and I started asking her questions, and she would answer them with movement. Where did that come from? Well, I think it just came from this idea, this absolute joy I have doing this work and talking to my clients about actually really being limitless. Really, I mean, we think we can think about being limitless. It's hard for humans. We've been programmed with limitation after limitation. Look, even alternative healers, we're like, you know, conventional medicine, that's too limiting. And then they go over and they create their alternative method or modality or whatever. And then they typically, because we're human, put some limits on it, right? So I'm really trying to push the bounds of those limitations, or at least suggest that people consider doing it, because you don't have to, right? Yes. It's back to being sovereign again. It focuses on the sovereignty of both the client and the practitioner coming together. And we do, in BQH, we do a decree. And we use water alchemy to put that into our bodies. And the practitioner and the client come together. I know you've done lots of interviews with beautiful Dr. Joe Dispenza, whom I love. And this is so much about his kind of work too. And the heart-mind coherence that is built right in to moving into this practice between the practitioner and the client, to where we get our hearts in sync, our breath in sync. Magic happens.
Wow. And so you train people, so people can contact you that want to be trained with this. They can. There is online. They can do it through online, or how does it work with all this changing scenery here?
Well, it came just in time, right? I mean, when BQH first came out, it was kind of new, you know. It was interesting to look at and people to consider. And when everything started happening this past year in 2020, more and more and more and more people, they're learning that they can do all kinds of things this way, and indeed have to, if they're going to continue this work and continue assisting others. So yes, there's an online class that's self-paced, but there's also live classes. I just did my first live class in July, and we have another live class here in the Heartland in October, and I'm so excited about it. And it was so profound and amazing. And let me tell you, after the months that we've been through, to actually be able to put a real human heart next to my human heart for more real hugs is a wonderful thing. So contact and connection with humans of all kinds is really needed now. If we have to do it this way, there's some safe and effective ways to do it like this, and with safeguards in place, including, you know, proctors if you need, etc. But we have, of course, made the modality available to be done in person and learned in person.
So there's two websites, quantumhealers.com, and the other one is Candice Gold.
It's Candice Craw Goldman with no hyphen .com. That's my personal website. But quite frankly, Lilou, I spend the majority of my time assisting and supporting other practitioners. Our community is my absolute passion, and it's been that way from the beginning. And we are open to any kind of healer, any kind, EFT, cranial sacral, shamanic healing, and even coaches and health coaches and all of that. And what's so great is we share tips across, we don't box ourselves in. We come together and share tips across modalities and help each other that way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, quantumhealers.com.
Very cool. I guess you don't do sessions anymore.
I do. I absolutely do, because you have to. If you don't do sessions in this work, you have to keep your hand in it.
Yes.
But I think about Dolores all the time. I mean, all the time, because she was in her 80s, traveling and doing all this. And when she would, and I assisted her in her live classes in Arkansas. Let me tell you, when class was over and dinner was over, after dinner and back in the hotel room, boy, wow, what a day. That woman was writing.
I'm not surprised.
How she did it, I don't really know.
But she got energy from doing what you love. You get energy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But still, she was in her 80s. So I still do sessions, absolutely. But a great majority of my time is helping others do this. And you know why? Because it's expansive, and it really is service to others. So service to others can be one-on-one, but I really love the service to this way, because then it's exponential.
Very cool. Well, thank you for this beautiful interview, and I look forward to experiencing it with you too. I'm going to book a session.
Oh my goodness.
That would be so fun. From France to the US.
Before, just talking to you. No.
I love it. And I wish you a beautiful day, and beautiful day to all co-creators out there, wherever you are around the world. Send you big kisses. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it wildly. And I see 111. Oh my God, we've been online for 111. 1 hour and 9 minutes.
I woke up at 1:11 this morning, and I didn't go back to sleep.
Yes, we're on it. We're perfectly where we need to be right now, and so are you. Thank you so much. Much love.
Thank you, Lilou.